Let's talk social moves. TikTok and Universal Music Group revealing plans for a shock reunion tour. Will it happen? It comes after Universal said it would sever ties with TikTok over concerns that its singers and bands would not be paid under a new contract. Let's bring in Dr. Karen Sutherland from the University of the Sunshine Coast. We've been watching this. When we think of TikTok, it became really famous of people singing and dancing around. And I always used to think to myself, how would they get the rights to this really popular music? How is anyone making any money? And sure enough, years later, Universal said, show us the money.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they say that TikTok does pay artists, but significantly less than any of the other social media platforms. And from what I hear, that's not a lot anyway. So for them to actually come out and say we want to cut ties with this means that they mustn't be being paid very much at all.
Yeah, so what is it all about? How did it get to the stage, and is Universal on their own here?
It's the only sort of music company that I have heard about, but I think they really need each other. Like social platforms, particularly ones like TikTok, are huge promoters of music. So often newer artists really break through on platforms and social media platforms, particularly TikTok. And so, yeah, I think they need to really come up with an agreement that they're both happy with for the relationship to continue. But I think they need each other, so they will eventually.
You are so right. You talk about needing each other. When you see these big media companies, and we've seen it in news, right? They've gone to big news companies, have gone to Facebook as in Meta, they've gone to Google as in YouTube and said, you need to pay us for content. And in response, Meta has removed news from their Facebook platform. In Canada, they did it for a brief period of time. In Australia as well, I don't see much news on my Facebook these days. And then you look at YouTube, and it is very much all about the algorithm these days. Is Universal essentially falling in the same place when it comes to music, saying, we have a product, you need to pay, and TikTok will essentially say, we can get our content elsewhere?
Yeah, I think it's almost they're really butting heads over this particular issue. And I think if pushed, TikTok will, I think TikTok does actually have the upper hand here because they get to choose what's on their platform. And so they might say, yes, worry, we'll use other music. Or what has actually been a bit of a sticking point in this negotiation is that TikTok is very supportive of AI-generated music. And so that's a real threat to the music industry and traditional revenue streams from music if that actually becomes more of a mainstream practice.
I'm so glad you brought this up. I think it's such an interesting topic, and it came about as well with the actors and the writers' strike and the everyone strike that hit Hollywood, that now this year you have cinema chains saying, hey, we're probably going to go under because there are now no movies coming out this year. We've seen right through the UK cinema chains collapsing in the United States, heading for Chapter 11 bankruptcy as well. And now you have a look at what could happen to music and artists because business always finds a way, right? You might come up with a rule, but there'll be someone who says, okay, we don't have the money. And if you think of it from TikTok's perspective, obviously we always think about it from the artist's perspective, but you have to think, where's the money coming from? I don't pay to use TikTok. I fly through the ads and don't even notice that they're there. So obviously in terms of paying, the artist can say, give me all the money. But if TikTok says we don't have it and it's not coming through from the music, you end up in the point we're at right now, right?
Oh, totally. And people want to put music on their videos, and they want to share music on the platform because it's such a huge part of it. That's where its origins were, really, when it was music.
And I've seen some artists and songs that I've never heard of, and the poor people in the newsroom who are watching this right now will know that when I hear a song, I can't get it out of my head. And quite often it's from artists that I've never heard from before. But thanks to TikTok, and they may not even be represented by major companies, it has been able to be turned into a trend and then turned into something that you can't get out of your head, which then allows them to be able to go to a record company and say, look at this, I have this grassroots support. I already have a fan base, sign me up.
Oh, totally. And it also bleeds into radio as well, where I remember I was in some shop one day listening to a radio station. I was browsing, and I think I was in there a while. 5 tracks were trending on TikTok at that time, and they were just playing these the full versions of these songs that were booming on TikTok.
Hang on, what shop were you in that you were there long enough to hear 5 songs? Wait a second.
I
No, I think it's such an interesting point, and I think that the AI aspect is going to be something to watch because, as we say, business always finds a way, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And technology is moving very quickly.
Yeah, all right. Speaking of which, we do too. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.